So as we look at your being focused and narrowing your focus and targeting your outreach and your collaboration so that your efforts produce impact, the women and girls that AEUW has fought for 139 years need you more today than ever before. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment and the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, two crucial milestones in giving women the right to vote. With Title IX currently being under threat, with us continuing to have a persistent pay gap and a dearth of women leaders, the stakes for us couldn't be higher. A little while ago, I talked about some upsides to sheltering at home, but think about the women who were domestic violence victims before COVID-19. The only respite for some of them was when they left the house to go to work or when their abuser left the house to go to work. And now COVID has forced them to be in the house with that abuser 24/7. Coupled with layoffs, emotions running high, stress and tension has made them prisoners, unable to escape. The number of domestic violence incidents across the country has almost doubled since the stay-at-home orders have been issued across the country. And soon, women and children are going to be facing eviction, on top of unemployment, loss of the little stability they may have had before COVID. For those that go back to the workplace, they may face increased discrimination and harassment, an actual doubling down on the bad behavior that existed before COVID. And while we're all stuck at home, the administration has been working overtime to try to take away the gains that we've made over time. The Department of Education issued a new Title IX rule recently that's going to make it harder for campus sexual assault victims. The results of this rule are pretty clear. Fewer will report their assaults and harassment, schools will be more dangerous, and more survivors will be denied their legal right to equal access to education after experiencing sexual violence. Now, yes, the Supreme Court shocked us this week, pleasantly so, with two decisions. One on transgender health care, the other on DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. On Thursday, the prolonged uncertainty facing more than 800,000 people who have applied for DACA protection over the years with ease when the Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, ruled that the Trump administration did not offer sufficient justification in trying to terminate the program. Now, while the court did good in those two cases, they declined to hear 8 cases which asked them to reconsider an earlier decision granting qualified immunity to law enforcement and other government officials in cases involving wrongful death due to use of excessive force. Women were at the bottom of the pay ladder before COVID, and things will likely continue to be bad for them during the economic recovery. Now, some good news is Target's announcement this week that it's going to increase its hourly wage to $15 by year's end. However, we need to monitor that in terms of how it's implemented and try to make sure employees don't see their hours cut in half, making them ineligible for health benefits. Our staff has made the pivot from producing in the traditional workplace to telework from home. They made that transition with lightning speed and precision, and they're continuing the important work of AEUW without missing a beat. We should be very proud of them. As Kim noted, the board is looking at our strategic plan for possible amendment, but whether it's amended or not, one thing is for sure. The accomplishment of the goals in our strategic plan and any projects and programs that we undertake have to be funded. That brings us to the restricted versus unrestricted giving and funding issue. If you saw the board town hall earlier this week, then you saw board member Peggy Cabinas's delightful and informative Lego display. That display demonstrates that with more than $150 million in restricted funding for fellowships, grants, scholarships, and other restricted purposes, we are doing great with restricted giving and don't need more targeted giving to particular programs and projects. But we have less than $4 million available to us in unrestricted funding. And that's for everything else, including policy work, all of our programs, research, the office and building expenses, staff and general operations. So what we need are donations to AAUW's greatest needs, to give us the flexibility we need to act quickly and decisively when issues arise, and to work on those projects which will bring real impact in the fulfillment of our mission. In short, we can only work on those programs and projects which are funded. We cannot take money from the restricted fund to use for unrestricted programs. I'm going to ask you to continue to be safe, to continue to use your masks in public, to keep practicing social distancing, because although we have reopened to various degrees across the country, COVID is not gone yet. So my challenge to you today is to continue onward and upward, united in mission. And again, thank you for the opportunity to join you. I'm so sorry that we had this technology glitch that kind of threw us off our schedule. I'm going to take a look at the questions to see if there are any other than the sound issue. Don't see any. Let's see if there are any over in chat. Yeah, there are some questions showing up in chat. One is whether or not, thank you, Joanne, whether or not I can record my presentation and send it to all of you. I can try to do that. I can definitely send you the text of my presentation, and we'll see what we can do about recording the presentation. Darcy says she'd love to have a transcript, so I can do that, certainly. Do we have any questions? If not, I'm going to turn it back over to Susan.
Julia, I did see one asking about Blakey's Black Lives Matter. Did you have something to say about that?
I'm sorry, I didn't see it. What was the question? Oh, wait, here's some more.
I thought I saw one about, I missed all you said about Blakey, Black Lives Matter. Did you?
Oh. Did I what?
Did you say some things about Black Lives Matter that you could share?
I did. I said that many people are finding it difficult or impossible to say the words Black Lives Matter. And when asked about that, instead say all lives matter. And certainly, of course, all lives do matter. The point of the theme Black Lives Matter is not to say that Black lives matter more than the lives of other races or ethnic groups. It's not to say that Black lives are more important than other lives. It recognizes that the history of this country, through its laws, policies, practices, and actions over almost 3 centuries, has shown that Black lives didn't matter. When you look at the disproportionate number of Blacks killed by law enforcement through use of excessive or inappropriate force with no action taken as a consequence, when you look at continued discrimination, disproportionately high unemployment, low wages, poor or lack of available health care, substandard housing, poor schools, and the list goes on, decade upon decade of mistreatment has shown a pattern that in this country, Black lives have not mattered. So the point of Black Lives Matter is to say that Black lives matter too, that they matter as much as other lives, and that they should not be treated as disposable or crumpled up and tossed like yesterday's trash. And in response to the question of why am I talking about racial disparities and Black Lives Matter at an AAUW regional conference, because the vision of AAUW is equity for all. When women are discriminated against or treated inequitably, it impacts families, neighborhoods, and communities. And we know that women of color, especially Black, Latina, and Native women, are more likely than men to have more discrimination and harassment heaped on them and to be poor and struggling. So when any of us are treated inequitably, it adversely impacts all of us. So working for racial equity benefits everyone. And I see there are some more questions now.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. How do you encourage branches individually to promote the Greatest Needs Fund? People like local. And of course, people like local. I'm not saying that if you have a fundraiser, every penny that you raise should go to national. But I'm saying that the branches and state organizations are affiliates of the national organization. We shouldn't behave like we're 2 separate organizations and it's us versus them. Us is all of us, local, state, and national. And so I think focusing on the mission of AAUW and bringing about the vision of AAUW at the branch level and making a decision to give some of what you raise to your local efforts and your local partnerships and some to national certainly helps that effort. I'll give you a specific example without saying the name or the location of the branch, except to say that it's not in the Rocky Mountain region. There is a branch that has an annual book sale, and it typically nets $30,000 and upwards. Obviously, this year is different because of COVID-19, but they've been doing that for years, and they have never sent $1 of the money that they raise to National in support of National's programs and projects. Certainly, that is not acting in a way that promotes AAUW's mission or its vision or helps us bring about real impact for women and girls. There's a question as to whether the town hall, and I presume you mean the board town hall that took place on Tuesday of this week, will be available for viewing. Yes, it will be. And someone said Black Lives Matter something, an example of focus for impact. Iris, I'm not sure what that means. Candace, maybe you could clarify that for us. What is the one thing you'd like all branches to do? Focus on AUW's mission and its vision, and conduct targeted outreach to other groups in your community that you can partner and collaborate with, that you can co-host seminars, webinars, town hall meetings, and roundtables. The thing about this current racial situation in the country with all of the marches that actually are taking place not just in the U.S. but around the world in support of racial harmony and racial equity, it feels very different this time than when we have seen these eruptions over the past decade, because people who have never come together to talk about it and to try to address the problem and talk about solutions are talking about it and coming together. It's a very difficult and touchy, for some painful conversation to have, but it's a necessary conversation. I would say just as Abraham Lincoln issuing the Emancipation Proclamation was primarily targeted not to free slaves, but to save the Union, to save the country, to save democracy. Us having this critical conversation about race and getting past all of the discrimination and the disparities is necessary for the preservation of our democracy as we know it. And it's a conversation that's needed to be had for a long time. And I feel very hopeful because it seems, as I said, this time it's really going to happen. And I think the branches can be instrumental in helping that happen.
Julia, I really, really appreciate your taking on the going back over your talk. It was terrific. We will have a recording of this and we will edit it so that it's a good recording, but we